My name is Jenna Kanell. Jennakannell. I loved horror and genre films so much when I was a kid that then when I got older and got into acting and started performing in horror movies, it was a very natural fit. In horror, everything is very emotionally heightened, and my emotions are naturally very heightened most of the time. Looking back, there's kind of always been something lurking in the shadows. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about depression, because the more we stigmatize something, the harder it becomes to talk about, and the harder it becomes for people who live with it to feel like we're not broken. I've heard it said that genetics loads the gun and circumstances pull the trigger. Depression and anxiety run on both sides of my family. We were already set up with the generational trauma. Like a Jewish family that's only in this country because we were fleeing a Nazi regime. When I was younger, I used to have just nightmare periods. Every month, starting at the age of 12, I had these awful, awful cramps, so much so that it would be hard to move. I would be taking prescription level and over-the-counter painkillers, and they wouldn't do anything. So I'd have to be home from school for a couple days every month because the pain was so debilitating. And I ended up watching a lot of horror that I was probably too young to watch. It's like a roller coaster. You're experiencing this very intense sense of danger, and all of these fight or flight chemicals are being enacted in your brain. And heighten this level of empathy. I found a sense of solace in horror through that for my depression and my anxiety. Suddenly, I'm not worried about how my body hurts or about my own problems. For 2 hours, I'm worried about, is she gonna make it out of this house? Is he gonna defeat this killer? Are they going to make it out alive? So it's always been very cathartic in that way. Horror became a safe space. I am so sorry. That is so unprofessional. I'm gonna fire myself.
A mysterious ailment of the human psyche. Depression, major depressive disorder, clinical depression. All names for the same illness that has been affecting people for millennia. Ancient civilizations speculated demonic possession to imbalances in the body. Treatment was often barbaric. Rituals to gods, bloodletting, drilling holes into the skull, electroshock therapy without sedation. This left those people suffering from the affliction shunned and isolated from society, a stigma that has journeyed through time, leaving its stain on the present day.
So, your mind is a room, and for people who have major depressive disorder, that room is normally dry. And then every once in a while, there's this huge tidal wave that just envelops them. That's not necessarily been my experience. I do know people who have that experience. Mine is more, there are never any tidal waves necessarily, but there's always water in the room. And I feel like all I can do is tread water or just try to keep my face above so that I can still breathe. Depression manifests in different ways every day. Sometimes it's really hard to get out of bed because why, what's the point? Once in a while it manifests as crying. Sometimes it manifests in not trusting other people. Sometimes it manifests as not trusting myself. When I'm alone, depression will manifest as a rumination over the past or a fear of the future. It'll rewind over and over to different events or different interactions, and you're wondering about what different outcomes could have potentially been and examining what someone meant, what I could have said, what I didn't say. It gets very creative sometimes. I don't think wearing a mask is always a choice. I think it's very often a survival tactic or a coping mechanism. I wear masks sometimes because I don't feel safe around people or because I don't want them to see what I'm going through because I think I might scare them off. So sometimes you'll take your mask off around the wrong people and they suddenly make you feel like a freak. When I was 19, I was sexually assaulted. We went out drinking, and there's a moment in the night where things just went black. And I don't remember anything. Something had happened to my body when I wasn't there. An hour of pleasure for them is now something I have to carry around for the rest of my life. That event played into my depression because it gave my brain a way to escape sometimes without my permission. And it makes it harder to be open and to feel things because then I might feel everything. So sometimes it's easier to not feel at all. To me, depression is like a monster that follows you everywhere. It's in the back of your car while you're driving. It's next to you in bed while you're trying to sleep. I was at a very intense transitional point in my life, and I knew that I couldn't sit in it alone. And so I picked up the phone and called and set up a meeting with my therapist. Therapy is scary. You have to see a bunch before you find one that works sometimes. You walk into a room and you sit on a couch and you put all your trauma on the table and you have to dig it up and live through it again, essentially. And then you look up and what if the person sitting across from you is a monster? And what if they just remind you of what you've been through?
Or if someone, what if they judge you?
What if they tell you that you're wrong? Finding the right therapist is like taking off a backpack full of rocks when you didn't even realize you were carrying one, and suddenly you feel lighter and you feel seen, and suddenly you don't have to carry it alone because you're sitting across from someone who says, oh yeah, those rocks don't actually look very heavy. Why don't I carry one for you? And even if they just take one, suddenly your backpack is that much lighter because you're not carrying it alone. I don't know that we ever really have control, but we can manage it. Because the true horror is not getting the help you need. Getting it out and putting all that energy somewhere is so good for our brains. We really need that. In hindsight, I also found a sense of belonging in film and in storytelling that I really didn't have anywhere else. Depression is a monster. I tried ignoring it, didn't work. Tried killing it, didn't work. And And so I realized I had to create a relationship with it on my terms. You can hang out with me on the couch, but you have to sit over there. You gotta stop sitting on my lap. If you see depression as a creature, it still needs love and it still needs care. If you're mean to this creature, you're being mean to a part of yourself. I've become very comfortable with my depression. When people will accept you for who you are when you're not wearing a mask, it's scary, but it's also really beautiful.